I'm Abdulrahman Asal, and this is The Shadow of Sacrifice. Have you ever felt like your life was a thank you note that you spent every day writing? I have. I'm a first-generation child of immigrants, and that identity comes with so much more than base-level pride or cultural duality. It comes with the invisible weight constantly bearing down on you to repay your family's sacrifices that they made to get you where you are today. It's not the kind of pressure that's talked about. It's not loud, and no one tells you to carry it. But somehow, you just know. You grow up with the quiet and deep understanding that everything you do, your entire life, is built on someone else's labor, their dreams deferred, their sleepless nights, their courage in unfamiliar cities and second languages. And so you devote your entire life to become proof that their sacrifices, that their struggles were worth it. But what happens when becoming that proof costs you your peace? What happens when the path you're on no longer feels like your own? And that's what I'm here to talk about today. Not just my story, but the story so many of us live quietly, in between two cultures, two identities, and two definitions of success. So I grew up in a household where opportunity wasn't a promise, it was a privilege. My parents never had the luxury to ask themselves what they were passionate about. They did what they had to, and they did it for me. And so when they envisioned for me a path that I would follow, one of stability, respect, a solid career, I didn't question it. For my entire life, they had hoped that I'd pursue a career in the medical field, a doctor of sorts, as I'm sure some of you can relate, and I didn't question it. I dedicated every aspect of my life to prepare me for that career. I studied diligently, which inevitably led me to come to UHS. I practiced. I even altered my own mannerisms to prepare me for this field. But in the last 2 years, I began to question my path. Is this really what I want to spend the next 40 to 50 years of my life doing? Is this really my passion? And so I began to reconsider and look at other options. And don't get me wrong, this option is still on the table, but it's not as prevalent as it once was. And if I decide to become a doctor, it'll be of my own accord, not my parents' pressure. And I'm thankful for this alignment, but even with this blessing of an alignment, the expectations have never disappeared. They've continued to loom. Be excellent. Make it count. Don't waste what we gave up. And for friends and others around me who weren't blessed with this alignment, the pressure and struggle that they've felt have been much, much heavier. I've had friends and peers who wanted to do all sorts of things. Friends who wanted to become musicians, who had real talents for singing, who had a passion for teaching, who wanted to become pro athletes, pro soccer, pro basketball, pro football players. But all these vast dreams have been replaced by medical internships and law school applications, which are by no means bad, but don't reflect their passions. And this is because they weren't brave or selfish or misguided, but because they felt indebted, because they felt that pursuing what they wanted would be a betrayal. And this story isn't rare. According to a study done by the Pew Research Center, 1 in 4 children in the United States are first-gen or immigrants themselves. That's millions of children out there experiencing this exact pressure, the pressure of wanting to prove themselves, the pressure of feeling grateful but aching, determined but also feeling conflicted, loved but limited. Psychologists call this intergenerational pressure, or the emotional responsibility passed through a family who've experienced trauma, instability, migration. And on top of that, when you factor in things like unspoken family rules, cultural expectations, and the pressure to succeed in a manner that makes it feel like struggle is all the worthwhile, you create a uniquely heavy silence. A study done by the Journal of Counseling Psychology tells us that first-gen college students reported significantly higher levels of guilt, anxiety, and cultural stress compared to their peers. Not only that, but they were also 30% more likely to choose a career out of a sense of obligation than any kind of passion or dream of pursuing that field. And so what they experience, and what I believe we experience, is a term that scientists have keyed role engulfment, which is when you feel like your identity has been encapsulated and possessed by a role that you didn't fully choose. But let me be clear. This isn't about blame. This isn't about rejecting where our families came from. This is about finally giving language to a struggle so many of us have lived through without saying aloud. Because when we don't talk about it, we internalize it. And when we internalize it and feel we can't name it, we think to ourselves that we're the only ones who experience it. And when we feel that we're alone in our struggle, we make ourselves small, so no one else feels disappointed. We shrink our dreams, we mute our voices, and we smother the tension and call it respect. But what if honoring the past doesn't mean repeating it? What if the greatest form of gratitude isn't blind obligation or obedience, it's evolution? There's a quote from Vietnamese poet Ocean Vuong that I like to come back to often because of its richness. To be the first is to enter the unknown with nothing but the torch of memory. That's what being a first-gen kid feels like. You are the bridge between survival and possibility. You are proof of what was dreamed into existence. And that means your job isn't replicating the past, it's carrying it forward and creating the future. So how do we do that? We start by giving ourselves permission to dream without guilt. To define success not just as achievement, but as alignment, as wholeness, as fulfillment. We start speaking aloud all the things that we used to whisper in silence. We say, I'm grateful and I want something different. We say, I carry your love and I have my own path. We say, you didn't make those sacrifices so I could lose myself. You made them so I could find myself and become something greater. That's not betrayal, that's legacy. And finally, to the parents and elders in the audience, know this. Your children aren't erasing your journey, they're continuing it. They're expanding it and building it into something greater than you've ever seen, a spectacle to be witnessed. And so let them, trust them, celebrate their courage in choosing a different path, because that's the first step to generational healing. And to the first-gen students in the audience, know this. You are not a disappointment for choosing a career out of desire. You are not too complicated. You are not selfish for pursuing peace, or joy, or passion. You are the bridge between two worlds, two definitions of success, between duty and desire. And walking that bridge, that's not weakness. That's a real courage that the world needs to witness. And so no, you don't owe it to your parents to copy exactly what they need, their exact dreams. You owe it to them and to yourselves to build your own legacy, to create something that they can have pride with and that you can take pride with as well. Because that's the greatest form of gratitude. Not silence, not just obedience, but growth. Not just surviving the legacy, but expanding on it and building it into something everyone can see and take pride in. In the shadow of sacrifice, we don't just owe it to them to attain success, we owe it to ourselves to be free.